Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining. I am super excited about being here today. I'm super excited to walk you through how to overcome struggling with your communications. This is something that many project managers struggle with, and I've got some great things that we're going to cover through. So really excited about that. So let's jump into it. My name is Bill Dow. I have 29 years of hands-on PMO and project management experience. I've been at Microsoft for almost 15 years. AT&T, Singular, worked at the government of British Columbia. I've been an instructor at the local college here in the Seattle area since 2008. Constantly giving back. I've been a PMI speaker for many years. Spoke at several PMO symposiums. Spoke in London, England last year at a PMO conference. I've spoken at several MPUG events. Very excited. I'm also a four-time author of the PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, and Shutting Down, Project Management Communication Tools, Tactical Guide for Building a PMO, Project Management Communication Bible. Very active on social media, Twitter, Facebook. I've got a great YouTube channel, Dow Publishing LLC YouTube, so definitely come check me out there. But really excited about this and excited about showing you what we have today. We've got a great agenda. We're going to cover 6 items. We're going to talk about struggling with communication planning, talk about communication rhythm, communication links, stakeholder risk tolerance, distributing project information, and then we'll do a quick wrap up. Wow, that's a massive amount of agenda items, which is awesome because we've got great value in giving you these all this material. Let's jump. Is this you? Do you struggle to communicate effectively? Most project managers do, right? And so most projects fail due to poor communications, and that's because a lot of our project managers struggle to communicate effectively. Do you realize that 85% of projects fail due to poor communications? Survey after survey show you project communications plays a big role in project failures. So what are we seeing, right? Why do we have so many struggles? Well, here's what's happening. Project managers are either sending too many reports and generating status like crazy that provides no value or makes little sense, or they're providing too few reports and they're not really given a complete picture, right? So their customers and their leadership really don't understand. Communication planning is very difficult. This is not something you can take easily. It is very difficult, but it's something that really takes years to get good at. Just as it is becoming a communicator, you've got to get good at that. And so because it's so difficult, this is where project managers struggle. And what happens is project managers who miss planning their communications find themselves in a difficult situation to try to communicate status. They've not done the upfront planning. They have no idea really how their customers want to be communicated to. And so they don't know the requirements from a communication perspective, and they tend to struggle. So we see point after point on why project managers struggle so much with their communication planning. So let's do a little dive deeper and say what are the problems we're seeing, right? Well, one, bringing together various parties involved in the project's challenging, right? You've got large project teams. Everyone wants information at different levels, right? It's difficult to bring team members together when they're not all here. We've got folks in India, got folks in China, right? So it's really difficult to really bring them together. But again, when you think about success in project communications, you've got to have that full buy-in. So bringing everyone together is very difficult, but it is something that the project manager needs to do. Number 2, project managers and team members have been communicating all their lives. Therefore, they assume they can communicate project information easily, and that's not the case. They either tend to avoid it or ignore it, or they just, you know what, let's just let it happen. Let's see how successful that is. Or they don't establish communications as a high priority, and therefore they're less effective as a communicator. And the minute you're less effective as a communicator, you really are going to struggle to be successful. Number 3, project managers fail to plan their communication requirements, right? They don't spend the time up when they're planning their budget, they're planning their resources. They don't spend the time to plan their communications. They don't sit with the customers and say, what do you want from a communication perspective? Do you want status reports? Do you want newsletters? Are you text people? Are you graphics people, right? They tend to find higher priorities, right? Hey, what's the budget? How we got to get our team working? What's the schedule? And so they're doing all that planning, but they're not planning from a communication perspective, right? And so what happens is it becomes overlooked. Communications becomes overlooked. It doesn't get addressed, and basically it becomes an afterthought. And so that's a huge problem. And then finally, lack of skills, or to create a communication plan. They've got no training, or they have no experience in that place, so they struggle to understand how to proceed. They find it difficult to find team members or project managers willing to help them. So again, it's really around knowledge and really understanding. Have you guys seen those before? Yeah, so 4 things I've seen for many, many years. I've developed many PMOs. I've had many project managers working for me, and we've seen that constant problem. And so what do you do about that, right? So you want to bring together as many people as possible. You want to get that consensus on project communications. You don't want to underestimate how difficult it is to communicate project information, right? I can't stress enough how important that is, right? Spend the time and plan your communications. If not, it will run all over you. And I've seen that. When you don't plan your communications, you really struggle to be an effective project manager, and then get that training. Search the internet, beg, borrow, steal time from experts and coworkers, but you have to start creating your communication plan. It's one of the most important documents on the project, and it's something I strongly recommend you get set up and going on your project immediately. Make sense? Excellent. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to talk about communication rhythm. And I love this because every project's got a rhythm, and really important that the project manager really drives that rhythm for the project, right? Ensuring you've got that regular cadence and that regular rhythm, okay? So what is a rhythm, right? This is a relatively new concept. When you say, hey, what's your project rhythm? Most project managers have no idea what we're talking about. Well, rhythms are deliverables, they're schedules of meetings, they're milestones, they're customer requirements that help determine the rhythm of the project, right? That regular cadence, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right? Every week, that's a rhythm. As a project manager, you've got to be on top of your rhythm, and you've got to drive that rhythm for your project. So when you think about rhythm, there's really 3 big buckets, or 3 big things you want to think about. How often do you send out information? What meeting cadence do you use? And how much volume is being sent or received? When you really think about those 3 big buckets, they're really going to help you be successful. Okay, and let's look at those. So in those buckets, there's really 6 big questions that you're going to answer to really help you drive through those buckets. And they are understanding customers' communication requirements, not their, what reports or what building do they made or what wall do they build. It's their communication requirements. Understanding the project's communication requirements, really bringing your team members into that conversation. What happens from a communication perspective with external disruptions, right? How does that impact? How much volume do you send? What level of information are you sending? And reporting timeframes, are they accurate? So these are all the questions that you'll ask to help you drive the rhythm of your project. Does that make sense? Excellent. So let's keep going. So one of the things that we want to talk about is understanding your customers' requirements from a communication perspective. Again, not how many reports they need or what not dashboard or what app they're asking you to build. It's their communication requirements. What do your customers want, right? Can the current reporting systems provide them the data and provide them that up-to-date status? Is that possible? What happens when change requests happen? Do they come and do they affect the flow of the project and the rhythm of the project, right? And then continually following up, right? And so that's really important. Is you're going to say, hey, what in an 18-month project? What's that communication rhythm, and is that rhythm working? Right? And in a 24-month project, a 36-month project, you want to continually following up to make sure that rhythm is working for your customers. Right? When you think about communication rhythm, you're also going to think about, hey, monthly newsletters, right? Press interaction. If you got a big project like a bridge project or a building, right? How do you deal with the press? How does that impact the rhythm? What about major phases and milestones? How does that impact a rhythm? What about resource changes? Bob, the developer, just left us. How will that impact a rhythm, right? So these are the kinds of things that you're looking for when you're really driving those project requirements from a communication perspective. Really, really important, right? You as a project manager, you need to gather this information and really understand this so you can effectively drive your project from a communication perspective. Number 3, external disruptions, right? How do external disruptions impact communications? Well, they do tremendously, right? Think about power outages. Think about when you have major hurricanes and you're doing a project in a major hurricane zone, right? Or floods or any of these kind of things. When you've got external disruptions like disasters, labor strikes, economy slowdowns, changes in suppliers, staffing shortages, these are all external disruptions and they are going to impact the rhythm of your project in a heartbeat. Okay, so just think about that as you're planning your rhythm. Volume of information. When you think about volume, right, you think about daily, weekly, monthly. How often do you send out information? Or do your customers want it all summarized or do they want it detailed? Do they want high level information or do they want really detailed information? And can your customers consume the volume? You may be cranking report after report after report, but can the customers actually consume it and make it meaningful? And that's a huge component and something you got to think about as well. So think about volume and really answering these 3 questions. Level of information. I love this, right? Because you really have to think about the level of the information you're sending to the level of the person you're sending it to. So you're sending like a glossary, a summary, a colored status report to your team members, right? They're never going to want that, right? That's something that a VP or a COO or a CIO would want, right? On the other hand, are you sending a 25-page status report to a VP? Again, they're not going to want it. That's the wrong level, and they're not going to consume it, right? So what are the correct levels of the information you're sending, and are you asking that question, right? So typically high-level information will go to upper management, stakeholders, mid-level to stakeholders, detailed to team reports. But the key component to this is you've got to ask that question. You could have a VP that wants very, very detailed project information. And again, that's okay. You just got to know that. And then from a reporting time frame perspective, again, you got to answer this question. Are you providing information too often? Are you not providing it enough, right? Is it too infrequent? So are you killing them with paperwork or are you not sending enough paperwork? Do you know that correct rhythm? Have you established that rhythm and have you confirmed that rhythm with your stakeholders? The stakeholders may say, hey, I want a status report delivered to me in person every Thursday. You've got to confirm that. You've got to check that. So when you think about reporting timeframes and validation, you're really going to want to validate with these questions, and it will really help you drive an effective project, especially from a communication perspective. One of the best tools, and I absolutely love, is a project calendar. And it's really a report generation calendar. And so what we do in this report generation calendar is we say, hey, we need to generate X amount of reports for our project, and you throw it on a calendar. And at a glance, you can see the first Monday of the month, you do a monthly financial report. The Wednesday, you do a weekly financial. Friday, you do a status report. Same thing week 2, same thing week 3. Oh, week 4, you actually add a newsletter. So you've got a calendar that you can see when all these reports are being generated and really help you drive exactly how you're going to set that rhythm of your project. I love calendars. I think they're one of the best tools out there. I've been using them for years. I highly suggest you get those created as well. But I think a report generation calendar is going to help you really drive the rhythm of your project. Okay, let's one of the key concepts, and kind of change gears a little bit, and we'll talk briefly about it because I think a lot of people have understood this, but it's around communication links, right? And just where does that email go when you send it, right? And it's much like the telephone game, right? When you go around in a circle, a bunch of kids go around a circle and they say fire truck, red fire truck, goes around and it says fire truck, and the next one says brown fire truck, and by the end they say green ambulance. And that's because the communication is lost in the amount of people that you send it to. So let me explain. There's actually a formula, and I love this. And it's the number of links times the number of links minus 1 divided by 2. So you've got 10. For 10 links, you actually send 45. 10, so 10, you actually create 45 different links. So for 50 emails you're sending, you've got 1,225 links. So if you send an email out to 50 people, you actually could impact 1,225 people could see that. So what's the game there? What's the messaging? The messaging is you have to be very clear and very concise in sending out your information, or that information will be lost. Well, this is critical from a communication perspective. I can't stress enough how important this is. Okay, so really think about that, and let's just look at this. 2 is 1, 4 is 6. And 11 is 55, right? So I'll just give you a minute to look at that. And so I love that on the side, right? Number of people, 1 all the way down to 200, and you've got a little formula there. And I think that's a powerful formula and a powerful list there, because when you're sending out 14 emails, you can potentially see 91 people can see that. So I think that's really important and really critical to think about when we think about really concising and making our message very concise and crisp, so the same people read it the same way, regardless of how many people, how many different sets of eyes are on that. So I love that slide because it really sets a good foundation of how important it is to be crisp. So think about it from a discussion, like think about it from a link perspective, right? How many of you really are thinking about those links, right? When you send an email, you're just firing it away in most cases, or you're sitting back saying, hey, there's 5 to 25 or 15, right? And really looking at that. And so when you do that, you're going to get much crisper when you send out that information. Right? And do you think there's any value in sitting back and understanding those links? Of course there is, right? And so my question is, what are your experiences been? And I think that's really a self-reflecting question, because often you'd be really surprised that this person or that person got your email when it was never intended to go there. Right? So spend that time, think about these things a little bit more crisper. Think about the emails that you send and the possibilities of how that would expand using that formula that has been out there for many, many years. Make sense? Excellent. Okay, let's jump into a new topic called stakeholder risk tolerance. And really, how does that impact your project communications? Well, there's 3 levels of risk tolerance: high, medium, and low, right? High risk tolerance, medium risk tolerance, and low risk tolerance, and we're going to jump into that now. So when you think about stakeholder risk tolerance, you're really thinking about, and what we're going to cover is, the tolerance versus the reporting frequency, and we'll show you a table on that. Understanding how risky your customer wants to be on the project, I think that's a key component. And then understanding those high, medium, and low risk tolerance levels and how they actually will change throughout the life of the project. Okay, so let's look at that table. So there's really 3 main components, or 3 main levels of risk tolerance. There's a high risk tolerance, which is a risk seeker. Right? So they're going to want information at monthly or quarterly. They'll want really high level information. A medium risk tolerance, which is someone's risk neutral, they're going to have that step down. They want it weekly. They want a little bit more refinement on the budget, a little bit more refinement on their dates. And then a low risk tolerance is a risk avoider. Daily, hourly, on demand, you're going to send tons and tons of reports to them. But again, that lowest level, plus or minus 5% accuracy. A start date at 5 p.m., right? And so again, it's really highlighting the level of frequency of the level of risk tolerance of your customer, and the frequency and the detail that you're going to have to send. And I think that's a key component. So how do you do that, right? How do you understand the risk tolerance of your customers? Well, I think it's pretty easy. You just have to sit down and ask them. You want to sit down and you really want to understand what their risk tolerance is. And you'll get that by asking the question. You want to focus on cost, on scope, on time. right? But I think this is a key line here. By missing the important aspects of your customer's personality and their particular tolerance of handling risks, you may not be communicating effectively as possible with them. Think about how powerful that line is. If you know their personality inside and out, you're going to understand their risk tolerance. And then, of course, you're going to apply that table, right? High risk tolerance, risk seeker. Medium risk tolerance will both prevent and avoid risks. Low risk tolerance accepts very little risks. So this is just a quick table to give you that feel for where people are at. And, of course, the low risk tolerance people are the micromanagers. Okay, now understand risk tolerances will change throughout the life of the project. There's no question when projects go to red, they go to yellow, they go to green, they go to red, right? Risk tolerances change, and therefore your customers will react differently based on their risk tolerances, right? Initially, they'll be very risk averse, but they want to start seeing your progress, right? They want to see you hitting the date, see you delivering, and once you do that, their risk tolerance will loosen up a bit. But you want to watch for that. You want to watch for their communication needs as they continue to drive through as projects go from red to yellow to green. And I think that's key and really important. So as we summarize just the risk tolerance side, right, you want to do this from the beginning of the project. You're not going to have time to go back. You're going to want to understand the risk tolerance of your customers from the very start. You want to be aware of that personality trait. I love that line, right? And again, knowing their personality will allow you to adjust your risk tolerance and how they're going to get their information. 3 levels of risk tolerance, we talked about it: high, medium, low. Low being that micromanager, and so you're going to have to really produce a lot of data based on that and a lot of reports. And then again, understanding that stakeholder risk tolerance throughout the life of the project. You go to red, you go to yellow, you go to green. Risk tolerances will change, and that's something that you're definitely going to have to change your communications along the way. So a project goes to red, you'll be communicating like crazy. Goes to back to green, and you can go back to normal communicating. So again, all that risk tolerance based on the color conditions plays a huge factor. Okay, let's jump into distributing project information. Okay, and so when you think about distributing project information, it's really about getting the reports out. And I say there's 3 big buckets. There's verbal communications, written communications, and visual, right? And you want to work with your stakeholders to ensure you're aligned with their preferred method, right? Some people are text people, some people are graphics people. You've got to ask that question. So when you're distributing information, right, verbal provides the quickest way, right? Quickest and easiest to understand. But also there's 2 types of verbal. There's formal, where you're in a presentation or a status meeting, and there's informal, water cooler, you drop by someone's office, gossip, right? There's 2 types of communications that occur all the time. If you're not good at verbal communications, get good at it, right? You have to go to Toastmasters, go to Dale Carnegie, whatever the case may be, you've got to be a good presenter or you'll really struggle in this role, okay? Written communication, when you think about written, right, most popular is clearly an email or a memo or a project document, but there's also electronic, right? So presentations, legal contracts that are both electronic and paper. And then formal and legal, right? And so companies are hired to retrieve information from hard drives. So even if you erase your hard drives, they can always come back and get that information. So you want to be really understand your formal and legal side of things as well when you get things written down and on paper. And then visual, again, there's text people versus graphics people. Some people love graphics. Pictures are worth 1,000 words. Charts, tables, pictures, presentations, easy to understand, easy to grasp, almost instant understanding of the project information. Again, you're going to have a blend of that as well. When you're distributing information, you want to think about that as well, because that's something you're going to have to think about as you drive through. And so as we summarize on that, many of your customers will want to spend the time to provide status in person. Don't think you can just send a Friday status report and that be okay, because I really think that some customers just won't put up with that. They may want you to come in person and actually go through that. Written communications, right? Make sure you're using templates, you're using forms. You've got that week over week consistency. So you've got a status report, use the same report week over week. Customers will expect that. Your LT will expect that. It's just something that I strongly suggest you use. And then visual, make sure you spend the time and make visually appealing presentations, right? Have fun with it. Your customers will appreciate it. And again, have fun with it because it's a lot of fun and something that you got to get good at as you continue to go. Okay, so as we summarize, right, planning your communication takes time and effort, and it does not happen automatically. Most projects fail due to project communication problems. We see that over and over. I think there's reports out there, 85, 90% of projects. It's almost on every project failure survey, communications. So you really have to be on top of that. We cover 5 areas, right, to really give you that proactive approach for driving communications on your projects. My name is Bill Dow. A lot of this information is in my book, Project Management Communication Tools. You can find me online, find me on YouTube, find me on LinkedIn. My other book, The PMO Lifecycle, Building, Running, and Shutting Down, very popular as well from that end to end. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.